Hey there, welcome to episode 150 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 12:41 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, of course, on Friday, January 9, 2026. I think I've been pretty good about not saying 2025, so a good week so far. We'll see. We'll see if that continues. Today's title and topic, Retro Go. Retro Go, that sounds like a band making some sort of music, but instead, it is an expression you may have heard back in the old days with rocket launches, when all of the various Capcom Go, Main Engine Go, Retro Go, those are the retrograde engines. So, but it also could mean retrospective. If you're not familiar with the Cafe Genius audio program, Impresario's audio program, or the Cafe Genius Notion, Cafe Genius is not like a formal entity. It's more of a club, technically. It's an effort to better understand and interact and engage with our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem here in the Greater Vegas area and maybe beyond. The name comes from Cafe Centro, spelled with two F's, a coffee shop that used to exist, sadly, no more, as far as I'm aware. It shut down, I think, a year and a half ago. Cafe Centro. You can probably Google that and find out more. Two F's, it's where startups start. It was located in the South Park. There's a space in there, in the San Francisco, city of San Francisco, in San Francisco proper. Across the street from the ballpark. Probably in its day, it was the Pac-Bell ballpark. Then it was the AT&T ballpark. Now it is the Oracle ballpark. It's where baseball is played now and then. It was a cool little coffee shop, quaint. The South Park was a real park. It had grass and park benches and trees. I had been there several times. It was a very pleasant place right there in San Francisco. And indeed, where startup starts, famously where Jack Dorsey was working on Twitter, for better or worse. Genius. Genius is for the Genius lunches we used to have back in the Downtown Project days. I was not specifically a part of the Downtown Project. I was working for Intel at the time, so I would be traveling around doing Intel things. But when I was in town, if they happened to have a gathering, they were very ad hoc, totally impromptu. Come if you want, don't. Usually a dozen-ish people pursuing startup endeavors and whatnot. And it was a good time to sync up, figure out what was going on, who's up to what, who's finding some success, etc. So a very casual chat, not an all-day affair. Everybody paid for their own lunch. And that was that. And then we'd get on with our busy schedules. So I figured, that's a good idea to bring back. So the Cafe Genius Notion was born in January 2022. We started the Pitch Workout Room back then. And then the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program is about the impresarios, the two S's, a lesser but still correct spelling. Less often used, I should say. So 150 episodes ago, starting with episode 0, we kicked off this audio program, had a couple of interviews, and we really need to bring those back. So hopefully part of 2026 will include more conversation. But hey, I can talk for a half hour or so, sometimes longer. And today's topic is very important. So that's the story behind the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program and the Cafe Genius effort. And the topic, retro, is part of this idea that I had when we had our first Genius Roundtable. Actually, I had it before, that we should assemble a retrospective and reach out to the people who were a part of the Downtown Project and learn from them what worked and what didn't, what did not. And we're still in first of all, no one thought that looking back was useful. That's a problem. And finding people from the Downtown Project days who want to interact about a topic such as this is something of a challenge as well. So I have my work cut out for me, but it is a part of the overall initiative 2026 that I've spoken of previously, the retrospective, and then a rolling introspective effort that would be ongoing. So that's that. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary of 2 sentences, which I will read, and then the links for today's episode. Now, there are show or audio program links that I read every week, so I'm cutting back on reading those because you can just find them in the episode description if you so desire. The episode links are for this episode only and are relevant to what we're talking about today. Those I will give briefly so there's some context to their inclusion. And so on that note, let us begin. It is Friday after all. The summary of today's episode: Vegas, we have a problem. It probably started 100 years ago, and it most definitely got worse in 2025. We are not talking about quite what you might be thinking, but close. You might have been thinking tourism. Aside from the Cafe Genius homepage and the profile page linking everything, Apollo 13, if you're not familiar, the Wikipedia page for Apollo 13, in case you missed that reference. The Feynman Challenger article, HTTP Caltech ES, what the hell? What Caltechies? No, it's you'll find it. It's a Feynman document. It's an article he wrote. I think he wrote it, maybe not, about his participation on the Challenger Committee, the Rogers Committee, I believe it is, it was the Challengers Committee. I think it was the Rogers Report, and his experiences and his findings and some of the issues around, including his comments, which were moved into an appendix. Where's that appendix, you might wonder? Well, the final link in this set, the Feynman appendix, is at the NASA website. You can read through that. He was basically giving his assessment of the process and contributions to the eventual failure of the O-ring and, how we got there. So during this thing, he kind of did a little retrospective on what led up to this. And he talked to some very smart and insightful and, in many cases, frustrated people who had been saying we have a problem long before Jim Lovell did. So I find those interesting. Apollo 13, if you didn't catch the paraphrase reference, Houston, we have a problem. Vegas, we have a problem. That was what Mission Commander James Lovell said to Mission Control after the oxygen tank stir that led to the disaster in space. They made it back because of a whole collection of people who came through with purpose, leveraging their knowledge and expertise. If you've ever seen the movie, you'll be familiar with that. You can also read Failure is Not an Option, which is a phrase never actually uttered by, I'm missing his name here, Gene, now I got to look it up. Gene, it'll come to me when I'm doing this. Failure is Not an Option. Gene Kranz. How could I forget that? Gene Kranz. So he was in charge of mission. What is his title? Flight director. Yeah, Gene Kranz in Mission Control. So they had to figure it out, and it was everybody pulling together and solving the problem. If you happen to have seen the movie or how they, maybe you could check out that Wikipedia page. You can head down to the bottom. The section is Investigation and Review, or maybe you learned this elsewhere. But where I said the oxygen tank stir led to the disaster, well, while this is strictly true, that is what happened, that's not necessarily how it happened. The path to that event was long and problematic. As is so often the case, the first step is admitting there is a problem, and from there we work the problem and maybe fix it, or ponder doing that at least. We can talk about it. Space accidents like Apollo 13 and Challenger are high profile, so it is fairly easy to find the investigation reports, and they're usually thick, sometimes political. Same with the situation at 3 Mile Island, which is a pretty interesting read. Someday we'll have to go over that one. Not because we have a nuclear reactor in Greater Vegas, because it's a really, really good example of second story, which is another conversation. Just over 100% of the time, it is valuable to perform a retrospective, a postmortem, an after action, basically a serious look at what worked, what did not, and what we might do moving forward with that new knowledge and insight. I don't know if you know this, but my FFS Talk audio program is exactly that on a variety of less lofty topics. It is worthwhile to go through this sort of a process If done earnestly, which is tricky with my solo episodes, we will do a guest conversation and debate this year. I really keep talking about it. But so if you can actually get a committee, a group of people who don't agree going in, don't have an agenda going in, but can take a good, honest look at a particular situation, gather data, draw conclusions, not be political, not be agenda driven again, but to, use their knowledge and expertise to perform a serious, honest look or investigation or analysis into what transpired. The retrospective. I've mentioned this previously a few times, the notion of a downtown project retrospective. I've talked about it many times, actually. The DTP was in an appropriate location. Oh my, who writes this stuff? N. Need that N in there. The DTP was in an appropriate location, recent enough to be relevant, but distant enough to have settled out a bit. So people can look back at the memories without too much emotional current strife. I don't know. Will it get traction with denizens of the DTP? Well, who can say? But retrospective analysis need not be limited to the DTP timeframe and scenario, although it would be very useful with a entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem as it is today. It certainly was impacted by some of the downtown project revelations, what worked, what didn't, et cetera, et cetera. Greater Vegas has been around for a while, and the road to getting here, especially this most recent calendar year, starts way back there. Since we already have this out there, the report on Challenger was something, but the Feynman appendix made an appendix after something of a kerfuffle during the compilation of the final report. It was something else. The demonstration of O-ring seal material in a glass of ice water was well known at the time. Richard Feynman put on a little bit of a performance to make his point. And some of the insights Feynman came away with were the result of insights given to him by some of the people involved in the overall program, engineering, scientists, people from other companies, contractors, who were, other contract companies who built the solid rocket boosters, the external fuel tank, what else? The sub-assemblies and so on. So there was a lot of questions to ask, and a lot of people were giving answers, and they had been giving these answers for a while with their concerns and so on. So he spelled out some good stuff. The backstory is a good read, aside from the appendix. So I've included both of those links. Maybe a great read depending on where you're coming from. So, and Richard Feynman is a bit of a character. He's got some good and not as good qualities. I never knew the person. If you speak to or hear from some people who did know him, there's probably more to the story. His celebrity, his ability to explain things and so on, those are okay. Some of the things he wrote, maybe the question was whether he wrote them, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, let us hope he wrote the things here. It had been a while since I read the backstory article, and to be honest, I need to reread it again after I record this. It's useful. It's useful information to see how something like this could unfold and his insights about the investigation and so on. But I skimmed over for a few yes, oh yes, that's right, moments. And I've referred to this document in the recent past in a discussion about some of the things that you may have heard of in a few episodes of this very audio program here in Vegas. But before, I was not recording this audio program back then, but I said, has anyone ever read this as an example of hey, what are we doing here? And has anybody considered how we got here? Right? Those are important questions to ask about anything. Allow me to read the final paragraph of Feynman's article, not the Appendix F, but the article at the Caltech ES website, Feynman PDF. So this is a quote, the final paragraph. So my theory is that the loss of common interest between the engineers and scientists on the one hand and management on the other is the cause of the deterioration in cooperation, which, as you've seen, produced a calamity, period. And again, the calamity was the Challenger. I cannot remember the mission number. I do remember I was a freshman in high school. It was way back when. I remember we were about to take, we were in PE, and the PE teacher, physical education, said, hey, everybody sit on the bleachers here for a second. Apparently the Challenger just exploded. So now go out and run a mile. So the explosion, not funny. Teacher, funny. Everybody does it. We just wrapped up 2025. And if you're like me, you had a whole bunch of year-end wrap-up messages from any of the platforms you might be tied to. Hey, I did a retrospective 2025 episode for all of my audio programs, including this one. So I'm not bashing them. If you missed it, well, there might be another one in about a year. So, or oh, wait, this is a podcast. You can go listen whenever you want. A 1-year retro is pretty easy when you think about it. Now, I took a different take. I didn't review the episodes of this program. I reviewed the things that we talk about in this program. And this was true of all of my programs. So it wasn't hey, let's go through episodes and go through comments. No, it was, here's what happened through the year while we were making this episode. And I kind of look back. Now, it wasn't a 10-hour retrospective. It was pretty brief, but it was a couple of things to highlight and think about. It is even easier. Oh, and other people, like if you get a Spotify wrap up, it's going to be, I didn't listen to mine, so I don't know exactly what it is, but they basically take your content, or here's LinkedIn in review. You gained 12 million followers, and you put, whatever. So they're basically giving a statistical rundown and some memory, member berries. Remember this? Remember that? It is even easier to ignore the last year. I mean, 1 year, what's the difference? What difference can that make to anyone or anything? 1 year. Except 1 year can indeed make a big difference, especially if you have been paying attention to the Las Vegas tourism news, which pretty much everybody is at this point. The reviews of price increases, the nickel and diming, the allegations that the focus has switched to money over fun. Sorry, Bo, that's the trademark. It's still yours. So maybe you can keep it. This past year, it's actually the fun economy trademark granted to the UNLV Office of Economic Development in February of 2025, because we know what's important. This past year has been something for Greater Vegas. It's been something indeed. I may have mentioned this for the Cafe Genius Impresario Retro Show. Check me on that. The tourism year has been a challenge, and that's what makes the news. It seems to make the news more than anything else, like small business, innovation, et cetera, et cetera. The thing is, rather than a retrospective analysis, we get the retrospective summaries. Here was what you did, what you posted, what you watched, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are not useful, not truly useful, if you don't have the why parts, maybe the how parts. And that is the thing we should be pondering for our little oasis here when we do our retrospective and then our introspective efforts moving forward. If you're interested in such things, on that note, I would say be interested. Be interested even. The missing piece of any analytical retrospective is interest. If the people who are a part of a part of it are engaged and participate, we will learn something, probably something useful. We were there. We watched it unfold. We were part of it. Sadly, this is not something I encounter often here in Greater Vegas, and that is for things in the present time. This is an uphill climb to face first, is to get people to look back, to take their time and energies, to reflect, and to share their insights in a retrospective. My outreach into a group of downtown project people was not encouraging. I think there might be some reticence, wandering back in time, a time of such high hope, but of what might be considered dismal outcomes. And that's going by what I spoke to a couple of people about, was that they did not really enjoy their overall experience. It was a good idea. It was fun, but ultimately there were a lot of pieces that could have been done better. Hence the retrospective. That's how you learn. You don't ignore and learn. That's not for everyone. And I may be way off here, but this is why it is good to get information from the sources, because they sometimes know the hard truths and they can share them with you, maybe. What worked and what did not. Again, that is what's important. In their opinions, also important. About the downtown project. Why not? About anything, but about the downtown project in particular. I'll let you in on a little secret. The retrospection that involves individual survey responses will be congruent with the rolling introspection for modernity, so that we can see if some facets line up. In other words, The whole idea with the Downtown Project retrospective is to ask people who were here at the time, actively involved, how were you involved? How did you become involved? How did you hear about it? All the basic stuff. What was missing? What was lacking? Could the number of meetups been more or less? Was there true social engagement? Was there technical engagement? Not tech, but I mean technical engagement to advance your project. It's all fun and it's all, what is it? Fun and games? No, it's all well and good. That's the yes. There you go. It's all well and good to have meetups that involve beer, snacks. Hey, everybody, let's have a good time and let's talk about the downtown project progress. And that was something like the Downtown Lowdown, which I think was monthly. Those are great. But a technical meetup is, okay, now we're going to talk about how to advance, like your startup is here, you want to get to there. What resources are available in the downtown project to help with that, et cetera, right? So a technical meetup in my mind, as I'm speaking of it right now, would be to help your cause, not to get to know everybody and have a nice time. And, which is also good. I'm not bashing that. But was there a good balance of that? Were you able to get the mentoring, the advice, the insights, access to resources, et cetera? So these are the sorts of questions to ask people who already went through it in this geography, because there's a built-in collection of assumptions from people outside of Vegas. There's a built-in set of resources that we have. There's an existing culture, et cetera. So again, what worked, what didn't? And then we can line those up with moving forward, and you can ask some of the same questions on a rolling basis. So more generally, looking at longer term emergence over the life of the greater Vegas area will figure into the rolling introspection, though there may be a fewer facet alignment possibilities. This area has changed quite a bit over the last many decades, maybe 100 years. But perhaps there will be enough to establish a trend, a path, decisions and outcomes that have summoned what we see today, how they have summed, if you will. They don't all add up like normal numbers, but how has all this aggregated into the Vegas that we started with on, what was it, last Friday? 9 days ago? No, last Wednesday? What day is this? Last Thursday. And for year over year, decade over decade, et cetera. So, and there are people who collect this. There is a Las Vegas Historical Society. There's data that the Office of Economic Development almost certainly has available to it. There's data that the LVGEA has available to it, the Global Economic Alliance. How do they use that data? That's a good question. That would be an interesting question to ask, and we will. So why on earth is this interesting? Well, we can drop a George Santayana quote here if you want, but I use that one too much. So let's just say that history is a great teacher if we pay attention. I have already suggested that Nevada has had, since its early days, an extraction economy across the state from the very beginning, Las Vegas included, in the form of tourism. And Las Vegas is included in the form of tourism and entertainment, gaming, and vices, basically rent-seeking over building. Extraction economy in the early days were things like mining, which is literally extraction, and being on train tracks, being on the route from east to west and west to east, meant that you didn't really have to attract people. You could just offer services to the people who are passing through. And that's a fine way to start. And I'm not saying that there has been no cultivation, but what I am saying is we lean heavily to extraction. Think about it. Not much agriculture, education system could be better, growing but somewhat transient population, etc. Now, there is not enough water to grow the population of Southern Nevada, or maybe even the whole state, significantly. So I'm not saying we need 10 million more people. No. But why is it a transient population? Because for some, there's, let's put air quotes around it, nothing here for them. I've heard that. I've heard things like, well, all the best talented people go to and then pick a place based on what they're talking about. So is Vegas the farm team? Is this a place to cultivate talent and skill and whatnot and then send them away? I don't know. That's a good question. Hey, we should do a retrospective and a rolling introspection. More recently, the active economic diversification efforts are seemingly driven by viable possibilities where existing starting points, initial conditions are conducive to, say, manufacturing or fintech, which are both among the LVGEA key industries that we have talked about previously. There's a whole section on their website, key industries, with potential to succeed with returns for this region. So that's fine. That's what economic development is. What will work where we are with what we have. And eventually, it's kind of like engineering. And an eventual conversation with the economic development professionals driving these efforts will be interesting if we can make those happen. Did I say an eventual? No. That's what happens when you don't edit all the words. Eventual conversations, plural. There's more than one person doing it over there. If we make this happen, I mean, people in Vegas are not want to respond in any way to anything that doesn't offer them something. So we'll have to see what the value proposition is for them. I may never hear from them. Are they looking at the evolution of this area, including culture, in addition to actual resources or assets on the ground? That's my question in general, the innovation culture. Are they merely looking at a point in time asset map and a population trends forward analysis? So you can say, okay, here's what we have and here's where we want to go. So here's what we need to do. But I would offer that knowing how we got here is almost as important, maybe even more important. Knowing where we are now is absolutely useful. If we are beginning a journey, that's fine. And it is arguably true that this region is doing exactly that. We are where we are and people want to move forward, like it or not. Where we are now, though, is the result, noisy phone. Where we are now, though, is a result of where we have been. Where are we? As a result of where we've been, as a result of a variety of decisions and actions over time. I think everybody kind of has that intuitively clear, right? Yeah. How did I get to this intersection? Well, I drove here through these other intersections and started out in my driveway, et cetera, right? So, which can be seen with so many YouTubers, for example, digging into the alarming trend people are seeing where prices and fees are driving away a substantial chunk of the so-called working crowd, the middle class, the regular people, the Vegas baby. If you've ever seen, what was that movie? Singles? No. What was that movie? Swingers. I can't believe I said Singles. So dumb. That's a different movie. So yeah, YouTubers are digging into this stuff. It's probably AI generated slop. But some are actual humans, and they've been commenting on this. Not Leaving Las Vegas. I think that guy's name is Steven. And then Jacob's Life in Vegas. Jacob whatever. Oh, Jacob O. So these are two people. There are several. There are several that have been heavily into like nightlife, resorts, accommodation in general, restaurants, bars, etc. People that are more aligned with that sort of channel content are also making comments about visitor experiences, fees, overall price increases. Parking is a big, huge deal, especially if you live here. I don't know what the stats are. We could find them on how many people drive to Vegas. We're talking people from Arizona, Southern California, Utah, maybe New Mexico. So people do drive here. I have no sense of how many people that is as a fraction of the overall visitor population, but apparently it's not zero. So content creators are digging into this stuff. The Vegas baby crowd. There is also a Vegas baby crowd, so who knows? Aiming instead at more elite, higher price crowds with more money, the high rollers, the leisure class, the people who don't notice the fees and the price increases. How is this working out? Well, as those YouTubers are pointing out, this is not what was making Vegas work for so long. Knowing how we have gotten here includes knowing how we went from zero to halfway here, for example, and then on to here and so on. So if you look over time and you look at how price changes, economic factors, available amenities, how can we extract more money from the people when they get here? And I would argue it's important to know these things because there are adjacent businesses. There are people, small companies, small businesses, who are impacted by the decisions made that reduce overall visitation and foot traffic. They just reduce the volume of visitation. This has two impacts. One, it reduces the potential for customers who might be their customers while they're visiting. But most importantly, when you see a reduction in tourism, which is a key component, not the only, but a key component of our local economy in the greater Vegas area, you have people working in this economy that are touched by that directly financially, not through business and customer interactions and so on, but paychecks, right? How they make their money. Those people can spend less money locally. More noisy phone. Literally about pictures from, they have a new memory for me. Yeah, I took the picture, I know. So when decisions made by people who are looking at tourism are made without reflection, you end up with direct economic impact to the blast radius is larger than they probably are thinking. Maybe they are thinking. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. We should ask people what they think. So when those decisions are made and the blast radius impacts small businesses, Formula One is always my go-to example there. People suffer because of the second and third order effects of reduced tourism. So it's something to think about, and it's something to be aware of, and it's something to reflect on in a transparent way. So it's not just they, them. It should be we, because we are impacted. Those even impact things like cost of living in general. I will close today's episode. This is the final section, my 3 bullet points. I will close today's episode with the point of this retrospection and introspection notion in general, and that is to attempt to make the overall ecosystem observable so that everyone has a sense of what is working and what is not. Everybody who is a part of it and who is impacted by it, by its overall health, by its direction and so on, should be able to look inside and see how it's working and who thinks what and so on, not be told there's nothing to see here. Move along. It is easy to make statements about the success of Formula One or the growth of the key industries. Like I said, the manufacturing is the one I think is probably most sensible. Fintech, sports, fitness, and health. Healthcare is actually a growing segment of the economy in general. So sports, maybe that'll fit in there. The things that are not the fun economy. And if you look at the LVGA page right at the bottom, oh yeah, that's right. In our thriving economic ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem, or whatever the words they use. I've talked about this previously. They don't really put much attention on that one. So Formula One and the growth of key industry is part of the economic diversification efforts in motion right now. It is another to have a real idea of how these factors, and there are many more, these are the 2 I refer to often, are impacting small business and individuals. And I just went into what that impact can be. There may be other things. And even the ability to hire might come down to whether people want to stay here and get work. And so there's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving pieces to consider. And if we do that transparently and so people can observe, then there might be some better understanding of what is working and what is not. Some of this diversification may lean more into importing talent, even whole companies, which increases the local population in most of these approaches. An entire company of one person could move to Vegas and hire remote workers, but this is not the actual goal, I think, right? They want actual economic engine parts to move here. And the possibility of a gentrification is real. It already kind of happened. It could happen a lot more, though. If you ever take a look at some of the thinking posited at the Vegas Tech Summit, for example, driven by the CEO of a one-person in Vegas company with remote workers, extraction is the key. Move teams to Vegas for the lower cost of living and cheaper housing, relatively speaking, and extract. Take what you can, make the money. Do they want to add to the economy here? Oh, financially, yes. To the overall health and well-being and growth over time, that's not clear. I think some people want to. I don't think the overall story is about that. But I could be wrong. Ben Horowitz is one of the people steering the Vegas Tech Summit on the committee to do so. He lives here. A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz, is not in Vegas. So he's, stop me if you've heard this one. It's more than a one-person company, but he is in Vegas and nobody else is really. He advises his companies to move to Vegas. He donated, a dozen, 10 or 12, somewhere in there, Cybertrucks to the LV, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. So, okay, maybe. We'll see. These are the sorts of things. Now, obviously, if you wanted to keep that confidential, that's his right. But these are the sorts of things that should be much more visible and observable to the general population so that everybody knows what's going on. I have been told by someone who does not have any such insights that the gaming industry is the only part of the economy that matters. In fact, it is a substantial chunk of the economy, but there is an ongoing diversification effort, and there are other parts of the economy here already. So that person is wrong because they're ill-informed. I've said this many times. The powers that be, do an awful job of getting the word out in such a way that people can receive it and will grasp it in context. Does that make sense? So this is not an accusation that people are less than in any way. It's that we don't have the infrastructure nor the culture of curiosity, I suppose, nor the infrastructure to feed that. So people aren't asking, hey, what type of innovation is happening here? What are the key industries? The information is there, but it's not often shared. LinkedIn is the key place where who's on LinkedIn and who is actually paying attention to. You have to follow the right people. So there's a number of issues with just how the observability is enabled at greater Vegas scale. And that's something that could change. Maybe we should ask people what they think about that. I'm not a fan of the extraction approach, by the way. I don't think people should move here and, hey, just bring your team here, lower cost of living. And by the way, I'm interrupting absolutely. I have one more point and we'll be done, but let me just interrupt right here and say, when I was in college a very long time ago, one of my classmates, one of my clinic fellow team members on our clinic project for Northrop Electronic Systems Division, I had known him all through college. So, but we definitely worked together directly on projects and so on. And he said, why do more companies not move to Vegas? Because, what engineers are not going to live it up in Vegas? Now, when you're in college, those sorts of things seem fairly obvious. Well, of course, on Friday nights, you 5 college parties or, living it up, loud music outside after classes. Those are, good times, fun. But when you tell someone with a small startup or an existing big company, yeah, move your employees to Vegas. Look, we have all this fun stuff to do. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but emphasizing those things to me is sort of humorous because it turns out distraction is not the thing you should be hyping up. Look at all the things that will take the attention away from the effort that you're pursuing with your company. Really, when you think about it, Vegas's strength historically, if you look back with tourism and the trademarked fun economy, is about people coming here, having a good time, and then going back home. Think about that. As you may know, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a civic volunteer organization aiming at making our communities better and really cultivating a culture of innovation. Ideally, we would be a part of a larger, multifaceted effort to do something like that, but it is not clear if this is the case at all or if it is even possible to do here. Thus, we need to examine our larger ecosystem and its smaller sub-ecosystems, and maybe, just maybe, make an observable system that anyone can take a look at and see what is working and what is not. I think observability and visibility are these are kind of nerdy engineering terms, but if a system can be seen and so is observable, and then we'll make it visible to people who want to observe it. So you create a user interface of sorts. So here's the data, and here's how we can make it consumable by a casual observer, somebody who doesn't need like an economics degree or have intimate knowledge of how city infrastructure functions and so on, but just some general idea, especially if they can equate it to why they are feeling the pains they might be feeling. Why do I have fewer customers? Why is there so much attention paid to big business but not small? But it's all these things. So I think if you involve people more in the economy that they themselves are an intimate part of, imagine if the 2.3 million people that live in the greater Vegas area, Clark County essentially, what if that was cut in half tomorrow because everybody got sick of it? What would be the impact of reducing the population substantially in a short period of time? But what if we also brought in 100,000 people making 10 to 50 times the pay? What impact would that have on housing and cost of living in general, traffic, etc.? Right. So what happens with these large population changes? What happens with water consumption, availability? What happens when we start building homes that are subsidized? That's a plan that's is that in the assembly right now, I think. What happens? What happens? So yeah, knowing and understanding, and this is something that should be happening everywhere. There's no reason that towns and cities shouldn't make this data transparent and available, so observable localities. So this is something that we can ask people about as a first step towards or in that direction. Is a smarter smart city, to coin a phrase, something that is interesting, and would this observability be useful? Is it something that should be on the front page of the news next to the weather and current Lake Mead water levels? Only one of those is true. It should be both. So that's the thing. So the retrospective, I think, will be a good first step. It will include downtown project people, and it will take forever to get them to actually participate, and they probably will not want to anyway. But that is a good first step to kind of get the word out, publish the notion that having people who are in this place be a part of looking at this place. I don't know if that's a new idea, but it's one that we're pursuing. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today on this Friday, January 9th, 2026. And I hope you're still having a happy new year. Fingers crossed. Take care now. Bye-bye.